here, kings and queens, royal highnesses, ambassadors, brothers and sisters. This is the Lumi City and this is the Lumi Africa hosting the first anniversary of the Lumi. And we just want to say to you, you're welcome as we are just going to begin, and we will give over to our guest artist, Seppi Taylor.
Hello. Hello. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here. Excited to represent Mandroli with Tammy, Masse, and Deleka Mandela, and all of you. Great to be representing you guys over here from Sony and Motown, and I'm just excited for this event. And this first song is called One Life to Live. Shot this, approved by the United States Pentagon and the Department of Defense. Shot it on the aircraft carrier, and it has it in the Capitol, United States Capitol steps in the Arlington National Cemetery. And this song features my friend, multi-platinum celebrity Ray J, as well as the United States Military Choir. And it also features special guests from the Motown legends who discovered me of Smokey and the Miracles, Miss Claudette Robinson, the First Lady of Motown, as well as Snoop Dogg's mother, who just passed away a couple of days, may she rest in peace, Mrs. Beverly Brodus Green. So I hope you enjoy it, and I'll let Tammy Masse hopefully play that video for you.
Greetings, everyone from Cape Town, South Africa. First, before I could play this, I need to say a little more about B. Taylor. B. Taylor is one of the first, actually is actually the first artist in the States to be endorsed by Motown legends after Michael Jackson. And he is also a humanitarian in nature, and having him here is a very big blessing for us in this event. And we want to thank you first for sponsoring this event and allowing yourself to be here and entertain the guests for today. So let me just go ahead and play your music. Just give me a second.
You know, I was asleep in my room one morning, and Mama came in, and she sat on my bed, and she began to talk to me about life. And I looked her in her eyes, and this is what she said. Mama said, life has its ups and downs, life has its leaps and bounds, life has the good and bad, can make you happy or sad. I remember just being scared of death, not ever wanting to take my last breath. But I know that we all must die, praying our souls will go to the heavenly skies. There's been some rough and lonely days, like the prodigal son I strayed away. God brought me back to home base, yes, restored me to my rightful place. When I stop and think things through, I take blame for me, but not you, and you. We all encounter struggle and strife. Deal with it, cause that's real life.
You get one life to live. One chance, don't need to ask, so have no fear. One life, only get one life to live. So you only get one chance, so have no fear.
Sometimes shows up like a beast. I ask Jesus to cover my body with his peace, and when he grants me this one wish, keeping the wrong people away becomes my next wish. I'm tired and I'm drained of the sorrows and of the pain, the many inflictions that people made, who really wanted me to lose, man, oh, not gain. Scriptures read, faith is a substance, so I took in much and abundance to help carry me through life's tunnels, to help shield me away from all trouble. Having the right mind to stay focused, evil be gone, hocus pocus. is more precious than the fancy cars. So I reach for the stars.
One life to live. So you only get one chance. So have no fear.
Throughout, you lose many and gain few. See the old as well as the new. You fall in and out of love, waiting peacefully like that of a dove. Awful situations make you wanna quit. Days confused inside of a bottomless pit, questioning why me? Why does my life have to be? But think the Son of Man was crucified so that all human beings would have a better life. That the impossible could be possible, so that the unreachable could be reachable. That all mankind could be teachable, so that the non-belief becomes believable. This is life, is something we can't hide. We gotta take it all in stride.
You only get one life to live. You gotta believe. One chance. So have no fear. One life to live. So you only get one chance. So have no fear, no fear. One life to live. So you only get one chance. So have no fear. You only get one life to live. So you only get one chance. So have no fear, no fear. I'm listening to you, mama.
I'm listening, mama. I'm listening.
I'm listening to you, mama. And I just wanna thank you.
I'm listening,
Thank you,
mama.
mama.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
What an honor to have you come to host us, to serve us and grace us here in this celebration, a wonderful time when we are celebrating our own CBDC. This is the only thing that we know today that is funding and sponsoring the African consciousness around in the world. This is an ideology that nobody is ready to fund, but we have a CBDC that is saying it is funding the work that we do, and we are so honored to have you to come and grace this wonderful occasion. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to have a good fellowship with you throughout this wonderful occasion. And we will be looking forward to our first speaker of the day. We will be looking forward to our first speaker of the day, our Chancellor and our advisor, and that is Sir Ricci Hausley, and I'm just checking if he is around. He will be our first speaker of the day. This is a continuing celebration. We had a wonderful, wonderful celebration yesterday of the Lumi. It is something that is so historic that for once we have a flag that we can rally around. We have today something that is bringing together all of us as the African people. This is the place, that is our assembly point. The Lumi is our assembly point. Once and for all, we have an assembly point that is bringing together all the African brothers and sisters all over the world. This is our unity, and this is our light. This is the Lumi. And we have been blessed and been given the Lumi exactly a year ago. We have been given the Lumi, which we are celebrating today. We have seen good fellowship of our brothers and sisters all over the world, those that we have not met before, but today we are stretching towards one another. We are bringing together, we are correcting the mistake of the Berlin Conference. That is what we are correcting, and we are removing all those borders, and that is through the Lumi. That is the CBDC, the central bank digital currency that we have right now, bringing together all the cross-border payments all over Africa and in the diaspora. And we are saying that we want our diaspora brothers to be the #1 trading partner with Africa. And that can only happen when we have a currency which we can call our own. It is a blessing to the world. It is a blessing to the African brother and sister everywhere. For the first time, an African brother and African sister has an opportunity to have that currency. Do we have Sir Ricci here? Sir Ricci Hausley, can you unmute yourself if you are there?
Yes, I am here.
Wonderful, wonderful. It is such a blessing to have you here and to have you come open and address this wonderful occasion for us. And we are so honored to have you all the way from Philadelphia. Welcome, sir.
Hi, good afternoon in my time zone. It's probably evening in a lot of my African brothers and sisters' time zones in different parts of Africa. I have traveled extensively throughout Africa for the last almost 12 years, and I've been to most geographical areas with the exception of Northern Africa. But I've been to South Africa, East Africa, I've been to West Africa, parts of Central Africa, and it is a pleasure to see everyone online. I want to say to all of you something I said on our last forum, and that is this. First and foremost, I want to thank Vanto and Tammy for coming together in this manner, because this is very, very critical and very vital. One of the things that I began sharing with them was that Africa has a lot of unique problems beyond just the fact we've had to deal with colonization, both physically and then ultimately economically. But one of the biggest problems that we have is that we lack capital. And so as a result, a lot of the former colonizers and a lot of the G20 nations don't see Africa as co-equals. They see it as a resource. How do you have a G7 or a G20 summit and not one African nation represented at that summit? And it's because the other nations look at us as a resource, and that's all they want. And so what they do is they puppet and play games with our politicians. And if you don't go along with that agenda, then they will create a coup d'etat against you and overthrow you, because it's about control. And it's about keeping us as a permanent resource rather than a co-equal nation, not represented at the G7, not represented at the G8. I am a retired businessman. I have been in the business arena for over 38 years. I am a commercial builder with a degree in architecture, 10 professional trades, technical trade. And so not only am I on the religious side as an apostle, but I have served in the business arena. I've served as an advisor, and in my retirement, I do consulting work for people that are desiring to expand and go into business. I've taught business at a college level. I was looking at yesterday here in the United States, one of our major Ivy League colleges, for the first time in the history of the United States, has started to accept cryptocurrency for tuition. And that's going to start a new trend in the United States, because currently the only type of money that people receive is either some form of fiat currency here in the United States. And of course, the US dollar and our coinage is what is accepted here. And you'll see that throughout the world. Every country you go into has some form of fiat currency, and then they will negotiate that currency through some form of digital means, whether it's a debit card, it's a credit card, some forms of digital means, or even physically a check. But that's how the world is ran. And when I go to South Africa, I have to exchange my money at the airport and have to get me some rands in order to be able to do what little that I need to do there in South Africa. When I go to East Africa, whether it's Kenya, whether it's Tanzania, whether it's Uganda, I have to use a shilling. If I go to West Africa, go to Ghana, I've got to use the CDs. If I go to Nigeria, I have to use the naira. I have to change that money in order to use it. We have a very unique opportunity here, something that has never happened and transpired in the world ever. Number one, we don't have a fiat currency. We have a prime currency, which means it has a backing, unlike any other currency in the world. And number two, throughout all of the 5 economic regions of Africa and the 6th region, which is the diaspora, which is worldwide, which literally represents the largest people group in the world. When you add all those people groups together throughout continental Africa, and then you add in Eco-6, which is the diaspora, which is in every nation, you're talking about close to 1.6 billion people. That's more people that are in mainland China, more people that are in India, or anywhere else in the world. It literally represents the largest people group. And how do you have a large people group like that and we don't control our own interests? We don't control what we actually consume and what we do by way of business. And that is intentional by other cultures because they see us strictly as a resource and not as an equal nation of people. And so we are trying to make a course correction here. Africa has its own unique set of problems, as I started saying earlier. And so we started discussing African solutions for African problems. For instance, here in the United States, we have a tax system that funds 12 years of public education. Africa does not have a public education system that's tied to the real estate like we have here. That's paid for, but it's paid for by people's real estate taxes and other forms of taxation. But for the person that needs to access that education is free.
Okay, let's wait a little bit. Oh, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right.
Yeah,
Continue.
you don't see that in other parts of the world, and particularly in Africa. One of the unique problems we have in Africa is if you want education, you got to pay for it. And you have to pay for it directly out of your pocket, not through any tax, joint tax system, anything like that. You have to pay for it. That's a unique problem in Africa that needs a unique solution. One of the things that I've noticed, and I've gone to inner cities, I've gone to villages, I've gone to small towns. One of the unique problems that you find in Africa is that people wake from the time they wake up 6 o'clock in the morning to the time that they go to bed 10, 11 o'clock at night, they're scraping and scrapping for daily existence. And yet Africa is the richest continent in the world. That should not be. That's a unique problem that's not everywhere in Africa, but it's too much of it, where people are literally having to live day by day, and they're scraping and scrapping for basic subsistence. And we need to eradicate that form of poverty where people can sustain themselves, stand on their own 2 feet, be able to feed their families and take care of their basic needs. We've got places like Nigeria where I've been. I have a church right there in Warri Delta State, and it's an oil town. And you've never seen so many oil trucks in all your life. And yet the roads are not in the best condition. They have rolling blackouts in a country that's the 6th largest oil producer right behind Saudi Arabia. And yet they got rolling blackouts. Everybody got generators. It's the craziest thing I ever seen. How you have all this oil and all this revenue, but you got rolling blackouts and your roads are not the best. And your water is not all that clean and dependable. African problems require African solutions. And so these are just some of many things that we are looking to try to solve some of these problems. And the days of just looking to the Europeans and looking to the Chinese and looking to the Russians to help us with our problems, those days have come to an end. Today we have a currency that is a prime currency, meaning it has a backing. And it has a backing by the most sustainable resource that there is on the planet, and that is the sun. Here in the United States, I have a beautiful home that I built 20 years ago. And my electric bill in the summer months was astronomical. I was paying $700 to $900 a month just for electric. And someone told me about the wonderful technology of solar. So I had solar installed on my home on a lease basis. They saved me 33% annually on my electric bill. 10% of that goes to the lease and for the equipment and the maintenance. The other 23% goes back in my pocket, which means it went back in my budget because I only have a certain budget to work from. And it's hard cash. The Caribbean, Latin America, South America, and Africa has more sun than any place on the planet. No single nation has as much sun as we have. That's why we're referred to as the Black nation, because of all the sun that we have and proximity to the equator. And so there's nobody that can compete with us. And the sun, that solar panel, like I got on my house, creates hard currency. Literally 23% going back into my budget and back into my pocket. That Lumi is backed by solar power and by grains of gold. And as a result, we don't come as people begging and asking people to help us and do things. We come as suitors. We have our own currency. We can do our own thing. We can call our own shot. We can create our own businesses and be able to keep our money in our pocket. All over the world, you have these economic centers that are called, that are by the Chinese, that are called Chinatown. We have them all over the United States in every major city. And when you see Chinatown, Chinatown is an ecosystem where those people learn how to circulate their dollars among themselves. And then for people that are fascinated by the Chinese culture, they'll go and have Chinese food and eat some Chinese food. So that's extra for them. But it's their ecosystem where they keep their dollars in their community and in their loot. When you go to New York City has several districts that are ran by Orthodox Jews. One of them is the Diamond District. Another one is the Garment District. They've got these various trade districts that are ran by Orthodox Jews. And that is an ecosystem where they circulate and keep, you can buy from them. They'll allow you to buy from them, but you can't sell them anything. The only way you can do business on the wholesale or on the manufacturer side is if you build a relationship with one of them, and through trust, they introduce you in to their system. That's how they keep their system. They keep it tight. And I've worked in that sector. I've worked in that diamond and gold sector. And I've seen exactly how that ecosystem works. Brothers and sisters, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are enough examples out there of ecosystems. There's enough examples of ecosystems out there where we don't have to invent the playbook. Now we have our own tool. We can take that playbook and create our own ecosystems and learn to circulate our dollars, or should I say our Lumi, in and among ourselves so that we can take our place amongst the nations and not just be a resource to other nations, but to be able to be respected for who we are. Poor people chase money. Wealthy people chase things. Rich people, I should say, rich people, they chase things. They're known by their things, by their cars, by their paintings, by their assets. But wealthy people, I said wealthy people, chase ideals because they understand that money follows ideals. You can tell when people have a poor mindset because they spend their waking moment chasing money. You can tell when people have ego problems because they chase things, trying to prove their wealth by their assets. But wealthy people, and wealthy is where we need to be. We need a wealth mindset. They chase ideals. The Lumi was an ideal that's born out of one of our main speakers today. The Lord blessed him to be able to understand the times and seasons that we're in. And he created that Lumi. And we're celebrating this Lumi anniversary. And it's a powerful thing. I pray that there are a lot of business people on here because you would understand perfectly what I'm talking about creating our ecosystems. When Chief Timothy presented the Lumi to us, people were asking him, well, what can we do? What can't we do? And they kept referring to fiat currency. Just kept referring back to that because that's the system that every one of us were raised in, the fiat currency, whether it's a dollar, a rand, a naira, whether it's a shilling, whatever, whether it's a pound, a pence, a euro, kept making reference to that. And can I exchange the Lumi for some form of fiat currency? And I explained it this way. If I have a 32-ounce bar of gold, and then I have a rock, why would I want to exchange that bar of gold for a rock? Does that make sense? The Lumi is the gold. The fiat currency is the rock. Show you where our mind is at sometimes. Your mind needs to be renewed. And I understand that we use fiat currency in most countries to do business with. We're making a paradigm shift here. We're doing an upgrade. You're being handed gold, not a rock. The rock will forever have you chasing money day in and day out. We're talking about empowerment. And we're not talking about just having Lumi so we can just spend money and be in that rich mindset of acquiring assets to try to impress people that we're rich, or having money for the sake of money and just get in that tailspin of just chasing money. We're talking about a legacy where you'll be able to leave an inheritance to your children's children. We're talking about generational wealth. We're talking about changing where we consume our energy. Today, we should consume our energy running after and chasing money. You don't see the wealthy chasing money. Matter of fact, they give away money because they don't need to chase money. They develop ecosystems and they function and operate within those ecosystems so that it's perpetual. Money's always coming to them because money follows ideals. I want you to make that paradigm shift in your mind. Get your mindset changed. And I know sometimes, particularly when we deal in continental Africa, sometimes, the challenges and the struggles that our people face are monumental and the resources are seemingly limited. And therefore, we can't go beyond our day-to-day capacity to be able to sustain ourselves. But I want you to know that if you can get past that, this Lumi is your opportunity to create a lasting legacy for your family. Something you can leave behind. There ain't but two things you can take to heaven, and that's yourself and your family. Those are your two most valuable assets. And you want to be generational in your thinking. You don't want to leave a legacy of poverty and struggling and scraping and scrapping for money every week to your family. You don't want to leave that. You look at the wealthy and the affluent. Many of them are operating off of legacies and inheritance that were left to them generations ago because somebody had the right mindset and learned how to think in terms of wealth and not just riches, by assets and just chasing money. Are you poor? Are you rich? Or do you desire to be wealthy? Thank you, Vanto. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dad. And yes, I call him Dad because He is the first African father who is from the diaspora who welcomed me in his home in Philadelphia after meeting in Ghana. We've been in Kenya together. We've been preaching the gospel together throughout in the continent. And we are so happy to have you as our first relational diaspora father who is coming to address us. And we have plenty of them who are in the room right now. We have in the room a lot of honorable guests who will be welcomed properly by those who are above me. And we just want to say thank you to you, Dad, for coming to grace us and just open this celebration. And we are moving on right now. We had a very special request for our guest of honor today. The request was that we are going to have, once again, Sir B. Taylor to give a special rendition for him as he will be coming in, and no other than our very own Sir Timothy McPherson. Before he comes in, Sir B. Taylor, are you there? If you are there, just indicate, and we are opening this time for you to give a special rendition for Chief Semako before he addresses us. We are in a time that is so much in need of the likes of Chief Semako in the world right now, because if we remember all the pandemics that we had, from the Black Death in the 14th century, it brought the Renaissance, the European Renaissance. It was so tough, and it brought something good out of it. And even the Spanish flu, after the Spanish flu in the First World War, we know that a good thing came out of it because there was industrialization. And right now, as we have this pandemic of the COVID-19, we Africans are coming out strong. We are happy that even in the Spanish flu, we got our own Marcus Garvey, who came out after that experience. This experience has been very tough to all of us, but we have a stimulus. Now, a stimulus is there just to stimulate what you already have. It is a stimulus. It is not a donation. It stimulates something that is there, and this is what our very own Chief Semako has brought to us. Sir Taylor, if you are there, over to you, just to give us a rendition before we welcome Chief Semako.
Vanto, can I say this before we do that? That we had a meeting with Chief Timothy. He did a presentation for all of us, and people kept asking him about exchanging the Lumi for fiat currency and whatnot. And he put up a shovel. He said, what I'm giving you is a tool. It's a shovel. He said, now you can plant a garden with a shovel. You can dig a grave with a shovel. You can build a house with a shovel. The Lumi Nation, this whole effort that we're putting together, was born out of his wisdom. He imparted that wisdom to us and said, look at this as a tool and an opportunity. And so he said, we're not trying to tell you what to create. We're saying to you, we're giving you an opportunity and a tool for you to be able to create. And so the Lumi City, this whole piece was born out of that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you kindly. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dad. Thank you so much. Thank you for your wise words. And do we have Sir B. Taylor?
Yes, sir. I'm here. Again, thank you. Thank you again, Apostle Ricci. Really appreciate this. And everybody out there, he's speaking facts as one growing up in the United States. He is speaking facts. You know, Apostle Ricci is really hitting on what Motown legends taught me. Mr. Gordy, Smokey, they generational wealth, generational. That is the key for us as African-American men and women, to our young people. So what he is speaking, as far as me being an entertainment and a global ambassador of entertainment for the United States military and veterans, Apostle Ricci, the Honorable Chief Timothy McPherson, they are on it. So I'm telling all you people that's listening, young people, what these older legends are talking about, please listen, because that is the difference between being poor, rich, and wealthy. Exactly what Apostle Ricci talks about. So with this, I chose to play just a little excerpt on the piano here Ribbon in the Sky from one of my mentors of Motown, Mr. Stevie Wonder, who helped The Miracles discovered Stevie Wonder, Smoking the Miracles, which discovered me and signed me and titled me a Stevie Wonder hip hop. I'll never be Stevie, you know, but it was an honor to be this. And I felt like this song would be great to play for the Honorable Chief Timothy McPherson, because he is a legend. He is ahead of his time, and he is on his way to creating something that is going to be generational for the rest, for everyone to see, and it's going to be forever. And I felt that's how Motown was, is their music has transformed and been generational for artists like me who are younger, whether it's my friend Snoop, Jay-Z, Diddy, Chris Brown, it doesn't matter. We're all influenced by Motown. So I felt it would be great to play just a minute piece before he speaks, because he represents a legend for all of us, not just Africa, but all of us of the diaspora. So I hope you enjoy this little piano piece, Ribbon in the Sky, by the great, legendary Stevie Wonder. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you once again. And we are so glad to have you have this wonderful fellowship with us. We are now going to welcome Chief Semako. We are going to welcome him now as he's going to give us the guidance on the flagship, the unification, the Lumi that bring all of us together throughout in the diaspora as well as in Africa. We are here together because we have our own Abraham of our time. We have our own Noah of our time building the ark, where we are all together in that ark together. We are absolutely honored. We are so much joyous to have you. Sir Chief Semako, are you there?
Absolutely. A most wondrous good evening to you. Blessings to you, one and all.
Thank you, sir.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes, surely.
I believe I must begin by giving a very warm thanks and a statement of absolute gratitude to my dear brother for that wonderful piano rendition. I don't get sentimental very often when I talk, but that piece, which is very close to me, did touch me. And so I thank you kindly for that wonderful performance. And I thank you all for the words of support, not only of the Lumi, but the words of support that you are giving to each other as members of the global African family. You know, we're doing something at the moment that is unprecedented in these last 400 years. Not to say that it hasn't been tried, for indeed it has been tried. Not to say that blood has not been shed and that many warriors before us have not done everything within their might and power to make it manifest. But the simple fact of the matter is that they did not, per se, get to see what we are about to see, and indeed what we are currently participating in today, which is the economic transformation, rebirth, renaissance, and reset of the global African family. And yet at the same time, we recognize, honor, remember, and appreciate the shoulders of the countless, not millions, not tens of millions, not even hundreds of millions, but the billions of ancestors that came before us and suffered all the things they suffered during these 400 years of captivity and affliction, but in so doing laid a foundation, a solid foundation upon which we are able to build upon, learn from, and transform ourselves in this 21st century. Normally, I start off by greeting all of the kings and queens and chiefs and chieftesses and prince and potentates within the audience. And indeed, I won't diverge from that practice. But today I recognize that within our audience, because we are being hosted by a member of the business community, we are surrounded by corporate moguls, economic leaders, and most importantly, the young entrepreneurs, our youth, who will inherit this legacy, this foundation that we are currently setting, and they will be the ones who carry the baton going forward. So I want to give a particular thanks to all of the youth, all of the young entrepreneurs currently within the audience today. And of course, I would like to give a special thanks to our dearest Tammy, as well as to Ndaleka Mandela, and to our dear apostle who spoke prior to me, as well as all the speakers who will be speaking today. Today, we have an anniversary celebration of a currency that found its birth back in 2014, actually. And I think it's not appropriate to discuss a currency without discussing its very conception and its very birth, which I won't do in any extensive detail. But what I would like to do is read to you 3 key paragraphs taken from the Bank Act that was written in 2014 and that was used in the establishment of the Lumi, because we must know where it started. And then, of course, after I read to you the Bank Act, I would like to make some clear statements about the implications of the Lumi in this 21st century, what we are currently doing on our tour across continental Africa, and of course, where we will be going forward, not only as a global African family, but indeed where the global African family must lead the international community in this 21st century. Can I please share my screen? I will ask the host for screen sharing capacity, please.
Yes, sure. Let's arrange that for you.
You can now share the screen, Chief Timothy.
Wonderful, thank you, Pamela. Are you able to see my screen at the moment? Tammy?
Not yet, Chief.
Not yet. No, not yet.
Not yet.
No.
How about now?
It's not on the screen yet.
Okay, let me try that again.
I know how to do it.
And are you seeing it now?
Oh, yes, we can see it now.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you kindly. Very good, thank you. So just to read a key paragraph from the CSRB Bank Act of 2014, one of the key thoughts that went into the consideration of the Lumi in its conception was taking inspiration and fortitude from the generations of political and economic thinkers whom with clarity of thought and determination have promoted the need for unity, solidarity, cohesion, and cooperation amongst the peoples of Africa, both on the continent and in the diaspora. All of that speaks to my earlier statement about recognizing that we stand on solid foundations in terms of all of those who came before us, those great thinkers of the past who knew that the future of Africa is dependent on its cooperation with what we won't necessarily call the diaspora, but indeed the sixth region. The next key statement is considering the necessity to preserve our cultural traditions while simultaneously enhancing our human capital and natural resources in a manner that will stimulate economic development and social progress. One of the major components of this consideration is understanding who we are as a people on this global stage. We are the global African family. We are that very tribe, if you will, that mothered and fathered all of humanity. We are not the newest comers to the stage. We are indeed the oldest players to the stage. And consequently, as we begin to re-engage ourselves after this 400-year experience, we must seriously consider our cultural traditions and make sure that we carry that identity, that sense of self, into all of our economic developmental and social developmental agendas that we have in this 21st century. And then, of course, thirdly, and finally, it is knowing that the establishment of a financial institution with a monetary instrument based upon solar energy, a commodity that is collectively common to all the world, but in greatest abundance for the African, would serve these ends. This speaks to transformation, not only monetary transformation, but a symbiotic transformation with regards to how we relate to our environment. In 2014, the international community was planning the COP15 Paris Climate Accord and engagement. And indeed, in 2015, they came out with major statements, major commitments towards the transformation of the international community's ecology, that they would begin processes of more sustainable industrialization, decreasing global carbon emissions. But the simple fact of the matter is that from 2015 until this very day, we recognize not only has the international community failed to honor its commitments to decrease global carbon emissions, but indeed global carbon emissions has been accentuated. And with it, all of the economic implications that includes. And so in considering this birth, this conception, this seed of 2014, by which the Lumi came onto the international stage, I do want to make a comment about what's currently happening in Glasgow as it is very relevant to all of us. And it is in particular relevant to Mandroli as we prepare to transform the continent with its first electric solar vehicle. The United Nations Climate Change Conference and Sustainable Development Goals. Leaders from all around the world are gathered as we speak to discuss nothing other than climate change. And when you look at the United Nations website to get a summative statement about what that mandate is, the sentence that they give to you is uniting the world to tackle climate change. Now, last I checked, continental Africa played a very large part of the geographical space of the world. And the peoples of continental Africa play a significant role in terms of populace as it relates to the global human family. And so consequently, if the international community is uniting to tackle climate change, then the African family must recognize its opportunity within this agenda. It must not only recognize it, but it must seize it with both hands. For no one is being afflicted by climate change more than the African family on the continent, where we see our deserts expanding, more than the African family throughout the Caribbean, who constantly is being abused by hurricanes and other climatic events, which are directly correlated to climate change, as well as the African family throughout Brazil, who is heavily impacted by things such as the chopping down of our ancient old forest trees. Now, within climate change and the Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17 key goals that the United Nations has articulated, and I won't go through all of them, but the simple fact of the matter is each and every one of them is applicable to the African family. It starts off with no poverty. Wouldn't that be something to really and truly manifest beyond political rhetoric? It goes on to zero hunger. It continues with good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work, and economic growth. Indeed, all of the objectives within the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are completely in accord with the aspirations of the peoples of continental Africa, as well as our diaspora 6th region. And so consequently, insofar as those goals are aligned with our goals, we ought to be doing everything in our power to make sure that we are not passively letting members of the international community stipulate or dictate how we will participate in these goals, but rather that we are proactively participating in the creation of policies, the creation of legislation, and the putting forth of transformative monetary solutions that allow us to finance all of these audacious and applaudable mandates and objectives. Because the simple truth of the matter is that most of these objectives are regarded as non-investable by the corporate community overseas. However, for the diaspora, we're not simply looking for investments. We are looking for transformation. And consequently, we see that all of these are not only investable, but indeed demand, warrant, and are fully qualified for our undivided attention and commitment in this 21st century. Now, if we consider what the number one cause of poverty and climate change is, then we must also consider the role that we play by having not taken a leadership role. because the simple fact of the matter is that the export of African raw materials is the greatest cause of poverty and one of the greatest contributors to climate change in the world today. I would like to repeat that statement. The export of African raw materials is amongst the greatest cause, if not the single most highest cause of poverty and contributor to climate change in the world today. Now, what do I mean by that? The answer is quite simple. If we are giving no added value to our raw materials, if we are not engaged in an industrialization process where we extract commodities from the earth and bring them into a condition of finished goods, then we are not creating employment opportunities for our peoples. Indeed, by simply exporting raw materials so that they can be processed in foreign markets, we create an environment where the rest of the world is able to prosper with employment opportunities. Meanwhile, our people suffer from poverty and the lack of employment. Moreover, as it pertains to climate change, the export of raw materials from continental Africa creates a situation in which we accentuate climate change, because indeed, if we had finished those raw materials here on the continent, we wouldn't have a situation where your raw materials go to Europe, go to China, go to America, and then come back to you again as a finished good or product. And so we would be able to cut down substantively on carbon emissions through the import and export of our own raw materials. The solution that we must have on the tip of all of our tongues as it relates to that very topic is singular. And it's all stated within the expression African domestication. Eat what you grow, grow what you eat. This isn't simply a statement about the consumption of food. It is a statement that is applicable to the entire value chain of all the resources that we have on this great continent. If we need computers, we must manufacture computers from the extraction of the earth until a completed product. The same is true for telephones and televisions, and indeed, the same is true for our automotive industry. One of the reasons why the African Diaspora Central Bank is so heavily attracted to and inspired by the aspirations of Mandroli is because when we look at the Mandroli automobile, we don't simply see an automobile. What we see is technological excellence. What we see is employment for millions of people. What we see is research and development. What we see is the beginning of an industrialization process that is interconnected to so many different parts of our economy that not only can we not afford to pursue Mandroli as a transition vehicle for the continent, but indeed we must regard it just as the vehicles that are coming out of other continental states. We must regard it as a flag, a signet of the economic transformation that must come. It is time for our people to compete on the international stage, not only competing in sports and entertainment, but competing in the economy, to use our intelligence to create every type of product that we are inspired by and bring it as our product to the international stage. That is applicable to phones. That is applicable, as I said, to computers. It is applicable to Mandroli automobile, for it can compete with Tesla. It can compete with BMW. It can compete with Mercedes. But what it requires is an African populace that is committed to the industrialization process. During the 20th century, if we look at the economies of America, the economy of Germany, the economy of France, from 1925 until 1960, these economies were driven by the automotive industry. The vast majority of men and women employed within those nations were active within the automotive sector or a related industry. And so today, as we look at Mandroli, we see a reminder that the time has come. Indeed, the time is now for Africa to become domesticated in its resources and in its own industrialization process. We all know what the Western world vision of a computer is, what the Western world vision of a robot is. And it's quite laudable. But the simple fact of the matter is, we have brilliant young men and women with ideas and visions who shall create that which the world has not yet seen. And so I want us to look at this computer technology, this robot, and consider that we are already looking not at the future, but at the past. Because all things that are on the international stage today, we, as a global African family, through the process of domestication, shall excel, go beyond, enter new heights, new realms, and new dimensions. Now, I know that all of you are familiar with Eco6. You are familiar, perhaps, with the African Diaspora Central Bank to a lesser extent, although it is the issuer of the Lumi. But I would like to take a moment to give the context briefly and the background by which we are here in the framework by which we must move forward. It is well known that regional economic communities are the building blocks of African economic integration. They are the overarching framework within the 1991 Abuja Treaty, and they are also the foundations upon which the African Continental Free Trade Area has been established upon. Those regional economic communities expand through Northern Africa. The digital Lumi is today the most globally circulated central bank digital currency on the planet, with its footprint in 185 countries around the world. Now, obviously, the Central Bank of China is not going to speak about digital Lumi. The Federal Reserve Bank is not going to speak about digital Lumi. The European Central Bank will not speak about digital Lumi, nor the Bank of England. Indeed, the only people who need to be speaking about digital Lumi in this day and in this hour is the global African family, because it is a currency that has been established to transform our economies. And we should not, nor could we, be looking elsewhere to expect other people to be hyping that instrument which has been intended to elevate and transform us. Now, in order to understand why digital Lumi is such a transformative monetary instrument, and I thank the Apostle for his statements earlier with regards to distinguishing between fiat currencies and commodity-backed currencies or non-fiat instruments. The simple fact of the matter is the three most valuable currencies in the world prior to the appearance of Lumi on the international stage have consistently been, during the last 10 years, the Kuwait dinar, the Bahrain dinar, and the Oman rial. And one must ask the question, why? Why are these currencies more valuable than the US dollar? Why are they more valuable than the British pound? Why are they more valuable than the euro? And the answer is quite simple. It's because these currencies have a close correlation in their monetary policy that connects them to oil, petroleum production, and export per barrel. So they're what we call semi-fiat monetary instruments and not full fiat monetary instruments like everyone else is using. Now, as it relates to the Lumi, rather than using petroleum energy, which has been a major, if not the foremost contributor to carbon emissions at a global level, the Lumi takes a leadership role in global climate action and uses renewable energy to establish its underlying value. Specifically, the Lumi is underwritten by 100 kilowatt hours of solar energy and pegged at 0.2592 grams of gold per Lumi note. It is the only central bank issued currency in the world today that has completely abandoned the fiat structure and gone back to that system, which is most familiar to our ancestors, the gold standard, and of course, a commodity-backed standards. For our ancestors understood bartering very well. Each Lumi note, specifically, 100 kilowatt hours, 100 kilowatt hours established at a pegged value of 4 grains of gold. And of course, 4 grains of gold on the international stage today when we did our underwriting for the Lumi, having a value of 15.96 US dollars. So that each single Lumi note has a value in the market of 15 US dollars and 96 cents. And of course, I always make the caveated statement that as it relates to fiat instruments which have no intrinsic value, that is indeed a generous valuation against the fiat instrument. It is the most valuable central bank issued currency, and we must use it to transform the economic condition of the global African family. Now, many people have begged the question, how do we convert Lumi into US dollar? How do we convert it into euro? And I've made the statement time and time again. I've said it repetitiously. I said, simply use the Lumi within your commercial transactions. And many people have said, well, you know, the merchants won't accept it or the government will not permit it. And so after hearing those statements, after hearing those complaints, I got together with my vice president, Dr. Linus Etube, who is the CEO of the Swifin payments platform. And of course, together, we began our trip across continental Africa. Now, before I begin my reasoning with you, I would like to share some images from our current journey across the continent, as well as the experiences, so that you can understand my position very clearly and consequently give a well interpretation of all that will be said thereafter. So Dr. Linus and I have come forth, and with us, of course, we have my technical team within the office of the ECO6 chairman, my dedicated technical advisors who are, I think, most courageously for having been with us during these last 4 months on continental Africa. Now, when we came forth, our first stop was in a little place that our ancestors knew very well, and that place is Cameroon. In Cameroon, we went specifically to the port of Douala, And in Port Douala, we recognized a unique opportunity for establishing a import-export hub for diaspora goods and products coming to the continent and going from the continent to the diaspora. And of course, while in Port Douala, we engaged the Port Authority, we engaged the Minister of Finance, we engaged the Office of the President. And after extensive negotiations, we were able to begin a process that concluded in us finally signing our initial agreement. And of course, we made an investment of 125 million Lumi, being a parity value of $2 billion within Port Douala, Cameroon. Now, of course, there's a lot of work to be done in the port before it can serve all the functions that we aspire to and will utilize it for going forward, notwithstanding what we were able to achieve during our first stop in Cameroon was dispelling the myth that Lumi cannot be used in large-scale commercial transactions or in support of governmental entities. And so after signing that agreement in Port Douala, we continued on our journey. And we went to another port in Congo. And of course, that port is called Pointe Noire, where we were warmly received and hosted by the mayor of Pointe Noire. And of course, you know, the mayor is a brilliant gentleman. I must extend my deep thanks. I know he's listening to us. Bonsoir, monsieur. You know, the mayor of Pointe Noire is a very shrewd negotiator. But after extensive debates, extensive discussions, and very hard negotiations, we did manage to reach a position in which we were able to get him to the signature page at the table. And we signed an agreement in Pointe Noire, which would see the African Diaspora Central Bank investing $5 billion parity of US dollars in Pointe Noire, being a value of Lumi, 313 million. In addition to the investment in Pointe Noire, we also made an acquisition in Pointe Noire of what they call Pointe Indienne, which is a major oil field, because we wanted to test the power, the prowess of the Lumi, not only in governmental engagements, but in commercial engagements as well. And of course, after extensive discussions and negotiations with the executive team at Pointe Indienne and the oil fields therein, we also managed to bring that under the asset base of the African Diaspora Central Bank. One of our key hopes and aspirations with the oil field, as much as I am the climate action guy, is to transform that very oil production site into something more sustainable, something more climate friendly. If you look to my left hand in this picture, there is a large flame that is burning in the background. Now, that flame has been burning for the last 60 years. And that flame is a flame of natural gas. So one of the first things that we will do is have our engineers design a mechanism by which we can capture that natural gas, as opposed to having it burn into our ecology as it's been doing for the last 60 years. Indeed, the oil field next to us is owned by a Francophone interest. I won't mention the name in this particular discussion. And they have two flames that are burning about 50 times higher than that flame that you see behind me. And the simple fact of the matter is that nowhere in Europe, nowhere in Canada, nowhere in the United States would they tolerate for 1 second natural gas being burnt and put into the atmosphere like that. However, because foreign companies have been able to come to our continent and take advantage of the laxness in policies as it pertains to climate action, they've been able to burn natural gas and do so for the last 60 years. We will change that process. And then, of course, after these commercial engagements within Congo, we captured the full attention of not only the municipal government, but the government itself. And so we had extensive discussions with the Office of the Prime Minister. And I'm very pleased to say that from the Office of the Prime Minister, we then traveled to the Chief of Staff and the Presidency. And without going into too much about what's happening at the national level, what I can say in a very soft way is that we have received the full blessings of the Office of the Presidency in Congo. And it is our expectation that not only will Lumi be used throughout all of Pointe Noire, but very soon we shall see it being used across all of the Congo. From Congo, we traveled, of course, to Sierra Leone, and from Sierra Leone, we traveled to where we are currently situated, and that is in Ghana. I won't abuse you with all the images from that. I only wanted to make it abundantly clear to all of you that Lumi can and must be used in commercial transactions, and it can and must be used to support our governments as we wean them off of their indebtedness to institutions such as the World Bank, the IMF, and those other donor agencies that may not necessarily be completely committed to the economic transformation of the global African family. I would like to stop my screen sharing. Are you still with me?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Splendid. I have given you an overview of the birth of the Lumi, of its monetary mechanism, and of course, of its usage during our journey to perhaps conclude with a statement of where we must go. And I say this to all of you as business executives, as political leaders, as young entrepreneurs, and in my capacity as chairman for the economic community of the 6th region and president of the African Diaspora Central Bank. We are in the midst right now of a family reunion. And it is a family reunion that recognizes, as Kwame Nkrumah correctly said, that the first and proper space for us to galvanize ourselves around is the economy. So as the diaspora comes forth to engage our brothers and sisters on the continent within this family reunion, it must be made abundantly clear that we're not coming as guests. We are coming as brothers, as sisters, as distant cousins, and we are coming into our ancestral lands. We are coming into the house of our forefathers and our foremothers. And nobody, I'm not interested in the title. I'm not interested in the name. Nobody should imagine for 1 second that if we find disorder in the house of our ancestors, that we will passively sit back and say, oh, that is fine. We've come with an economic stimulus to help our fellow brothers and sisters across the continent, because we recognize that after these 400 years, there is a great injustice that is continuating not only on the continent, but also throughout the 6th region. And it is an injustice that we ourselves must collectively address. And so we bring the Lumi to the table. We bring it non-apologetically, and we bring it forcefully, because the change that must begin today. We have no more time for discussions about tomorrow. Tomorrow is now. Everything that has been promised to us for tomorrow must begin today. And each and every one of you must hold your political leaderships to account to ensure that tomorrow's economic transformations actually begin today. The Lumi is on the table. It is there for small businesses, medium-sized businesses, large cap enterprises. It is there for our entrepreneurs, and it is there for those people who are even currently not gainfully employed, but have the opportunity to receive the stimulus and transform their immediate well-being. America has given itself a stimulus. Europe has given itself a stimulus. And now the economic community of the African Diaspora 6th region has given the global African family a stimulus. It's not something to take lightly. It is something to be taken very, very seriously. We must take responsibility for our own economic well-being, and we must do so today. And so in that light, and in that spirit, I encourage each and every one of you to transform yourselves mentally, to transform yourselves spiritually, and to prepare to transform yourselves economically. And perhaps, because after all, this is a celebration, and I know that my people are very spiritual, I will end on a biblical parable, which I'm not one for doing often. And I won't speak about the 400 years of captivity, but I will make another very clear statement. After the passing of King Solomon, his son Rehoboam ascended to the throne. And the house of Israel came to Rehoboam, and they made it abundantly clear. They said, "Your father, Solomon, put us to hard labor. Please lessen the yoke that is on our neck." And of course, Rehoboam sent away the house of Israel and told them to come back 3 days later. He would give them a response about whether or not he would lessen the yoke that is on their neck. And then he went to the advisors who used to advise his father, King Solomon, who was apparently the wisest man in those days and times. And the advisors of his father said to King Rehoboam, "Indeed, lessen the yoke, and the people will be your partners forever." And then after hearing the advisors of his father, he went to his friends who he grew up with in his youth, and he asked them, "What do you think?" And the response that his youthful friend said to him was, "Your pinky finger is bigger than the loins of your father. Therefore, make their labors more harder. Intensify the load upon their shoulders." And of course, the outcome of that was that when the house of Israel returned to King Rehoboam 3 days later, it was Jeroboam who asked the question, "What is your response, please, your Lord?" And the response by King Rehoboam was that, "My father gave you whips and lashes, but I shall give you bites of scorpions." And of course, he wanted to increase their workload. But rather than accepting that increase in workload, the house of Israel looked to King Jeroboam and defiantly and matter-of-factly said, "What have we to do with the throne of David, the son of Jesse?" And then he called the 10 houses of Israel, and they walked away from Jerusalem, and they walked away from Judah, non-apologetically. Now, the relevance of that biblical verse in this 21st century is that the global African family has asked the international community for win-win dynamics, for economic partnership in the interest of the collective. And while great lip service has been given to that commitment, the simple fact of the matter is that on a daily basis, the global African family feels the load on the shoulder being heavier, the poverty increasing, the lack of clean water, sanitation growing in abundance and proliferating amongst our peoples. And so there comes a time when every people must carefully consider their multilateral relations and know that when those relations are no longer working in the interest, we are fully justified in cutting certain ties and establishing a new order. And so we put forth the Lumi as our economic flag, as an emblem and a symbol of a new order, an order in which Africa is no longer looked upon purely as a source of commodity, but a serious contender on the international stage. A new order in which Africans no longer walk around with their heads held low because they feel ashamed of their lack of monetary prowess, but rather where the African takes his Lumi, holds it up with pride, and says, "I no longer know economic dependency, for I am a sovereign in my economy. I control my economy." An order in which the African fully embraces all of the principles of domestication. Eat what you grow what you eat, and applies it to all the dynamics of the economy. An order in which before we immediately purchase a Mercedes or a BMW or an Audi, we ask ourselves that question: where is our mandroli? Where is the cars that are being fully manufactured on the continent? An order in which the African takes pride in his ancestral legacy, takes pride in the works that he's doing today to transform and renew himself, and takes pride in knowing that everything that he does today is laying the foundations for our children, for our children's children, and for our ancestral children's on generations yet to come. And so, in that light, in that spirit, and in that note, I bid you all peace, glory, and praise in this new rise, this new world order in which the African man and woman reestablish themselves on the global stage. Thank you ever so kindly. Blessings to you.
Wow. Thank you, sir. You have a big rain here in Milton. Thank you for the inspiration that you have given to all of us. We are indeed encouraged. 100 years ago, we had our own Marcus Garvey, who could have been tempted to look at the Titanic, but he looked the other way, and he looked at the Black Star Line, which was the shipping company for the Africans. And today, we have our own Chief Semako, who could have looked at the Tesla, but he's looking the other way. He's looking to the Mandroli. And he says, just like the Black Star Line, today we can beat the Tesla with the Mandroli, just as the Black Star Line, it beat the Titanic. The rest is history. But we are encouraged today, and we have our moment, which I always call it the Switzerland moment. If we remember, Switzerland had a decision. When there was a war, they decided not to go to that war. They said, we don't take sides. But anybody who wants to go to war, if you want to keep your money, bring it in Switzerland. Up until today, their money is still in Switzerland because Switzerland was wise. Today, we have our Switzerland moment. We can decide as Africans to choose the Lumi and make it the assembly plant that is bringing all Africans together and build all these places through the Lumi. We can decide today to be united. We can have our Switzerland moment and never be poor again, just like Switzerland is not poor anymore because of their choice. We have a choice today. We have our leaders. We have today in our midst our elders, our mentors, who are bringing us together, who are saying to us, Africa unite, Africa arise. And we are truly encouraged. Thank you, Chief Semako. Thank you for the wise words. We are taking your advices, we are taking your leadership. And we shall have once again our brother giving us a rendition, because right now we are going to have the platform designer who will be coming to share to us how he is hosting the wisdom of this Lumi in a beautiful platform, which we have in our midst today, which is in the form of Dr. Linus. But before he comes, let us have our brother once again to give us a rendition. Brother Taylor, are you there?
Hello, yes, for sure. Thank you, Chief Timothy, very powerful, very, very powerful. I felt I wanted to play this song called We Are One, Love Is All We Need. I shot this during the pandemic and was the only one during our pandemic that the government had approved to film with our US military veterans, first responders, and the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Bucks. And I also, this year's Super Bowl, it was debuted. So I would like to play this because I feel this is important, especially after his speech with the song. The title says it all. We are one, and love is all we need. If we're going to take Lumi to the next level, we must all come together and do it in love and follow the idealizations and the teachings that Chief Timothy is stating. And I felt this song is perfect. So it's called We Are One, Love Is All We Need, the video.
Good evening. This is Hall of Famer Terrell Owens. Please join me in supporting B. Taylor, multi-award winner and global ambassador for our nation's heroes.
We are one, love is all we need is the bridge to connect these challenging times in American history and create a cohesive voice across our nation. To unite, to support, and to join our nation's heroes, our military, veterans, first responders, and their families on this quest for love and justice for all.
My life matters. Your life matters. Humanity. All ethnicities, all religions, all beliefs need an amicable solution at this time. Although we may not all agree on all issues, but with mutual respect and self-discipline, we can fertilize our globe with the power of love. We are one.
Wake up in the morning, knowing I must go. Look into my family's eyes, full of tears that flow. Wondering will I come back home?
No one but God only knows. Did I make the right decision? Will my kids be all alone? Gotta hold back the feeling that's inside. Be all that I can be. Wear this uniform with pride. Look up to the heavens for my help. My brothers and my sisters there, they won't ever let me fail. I'm the people's soldier, no matter where I stand. Give up my life for freedom, a good old American. Who cares if I'm a city guy or country boy? That's who I am. Let's all love each other. That's good old American. Say it with me. We are one. We are one. Yeah, yeah. Love is all we need. A little love is all we need. Yeah. We are one. We are one. We are one. Yeah. Love is all we need. Love is all we need. Yeah. We are one. We are one. We are one. Love is all we need. Love is all we need. Yeah. We are one. We are one. We are one. Love is all we need. Love is all we need. Yeah. People dying, babies crying, many fighting. What the hell are we doing this for? All of us have strayed away, pointing fingers every day. What's going on? We need some Marvin Gaye, the miracles that motivate. Homeless vets has got to go. Prejudice has got to go. Guns in school has got to go. Suicide can't be no more. When I get home, open up and accept me. Remember this one thing, land of the free. I'm the people's soldier, no matter where I stand. Give up my life for freedom, a good old American. Who cares if I'm a city guy or country boy? That's who I am. Let's all love each other. That's good old American. Come on and say it with me. We are one. We are one. Yeah. Love is all we need. I got friends. We are one. I got friends. We are one. Love is all we need. Love is all we need. We are one. We are one. Love is all.
I would like to take this opportunity to find out if Dr. Linus is with us. Are you there, Sir Linus?
Yes, I am. Okay, thank you very much. My brothers and sisters, it's a great pleasure to be with you all. We are going through very exciting times indeed, because on the one hand, I think we all have a duty and a responsibility to make sure that we leave behind a better world with a better opportunity set. So if you look at some indications and data from the World Bank and other global institutions, it indicates that over 1.7 billion people worldwide are unbanked. Now, the reality is that within continental Africa, the percentage of the population that is unbanked in some instances is as high as 91% of the population. On average, it's about 80% in many countries. And if you travel across the continent, as we are currently doing, you will find that these statistics and these numbers are really a true reflection of the reality on the ground. And so we set out to solve two problems. The first is to ensure that everybody who can and needs access to financial services can have access without regard to class, without regard to ethnicity, without regard to anything else other than the fact that we are all human and we all deserve the same access and the same rights to be able to aspire to live our lives, dream, and do everything we can in our time to ensure that we can achieve the great part of our dreams. And so we created an open transaction ecosystem that does just that, delivers access for all. Now, within continental Africa, there is another decade-old problem.
Dr. Linus, a host, please.
That is the multiple currency problem that we have. Africa is divided into different countries. We have today over 40 different countries within continental Africa. And the experience to a business person on the ground, an individual, and even governments is that for them to import anything from outside of their own country, they need to convert their currency either into US dollars or euros or any other foreign currency before they can trade with the rest of the world. And when it gets to actually trading with other countries within continental Africa, the same practices really do prevail. What that means is that as all of the African countries demand the use of the US dollars to import what they need, the demand for the US dollar is going up, whereas the demand for the other African countries is actually declining. The result is that we have currencies within continental Africa that are declining year after year after year after year. I was in Sierra Leone about 2 years ago, and for £1, you could get about 10,000 Sierra Leonean leones. Within continental Africa, we have the challenge of access, and we also have the challenge of the multiple currency problem, where countries within continental Africa, in order to trade with each other, actually have to buy US dollars and convert the US dollars into another African currency in order to trade. The net effect of that is an increasing demand in US dollars and an increasing decline in the value of continental African currencies, leading into poverty and other inflationary effects, which means that over generations, it's very difficult to preserve wealth, even if you worked very hard. And these are things that are within our control that we can change now, just by taking the right actions. So the two problems we're addressing is the first, inclusion, and the second, to ensure that we can resolve the multiple currency problem that can open up the opportunity for Africa to trade with itself, i.e. for the different countries within continental Africa to trade with each other, and also with the African diaspora, distributed all over the surface of the earth. I'm going to share my screen now that I am able to do it, and I will just go through just slides, in fact. So that's the map on inclusion that I was talking about. 80% on average excluded from financial services, highest concentration within continental Africa. So we decided to create a different kind of ecosystem that will ensure access. And it is so revolutionary different that today within this ecosystem, individuals, businesses, banks, central banks, and even states can actually come onto this ecosystem to begin the process of transacting with each other. And it is this ecosystem that we are using the Lumi into every household to ensure that every person in every household is actually connected to the new digital revolution. So we can reach each and everyone and empower them with the capacity to actively participate in the economic activities in their own countries, so that we can also start the process of not only preserving value, but empowering the younger generation and ensuring that that can be moved on from one generation to the next. I have a quick video that I would like to show very quickly to just reinforcing the challenges that we are currently addressing and for which we have achieved great success. So if you bear with me, I'm going to switch to a video. According to recent World Bank data, over 1.7 billion people unbanked worldwide. In some countries within the continental Africa, over 80% are unbanked. This means vast numbers of the 1.3 billion people. I'm going to skip the idea of the video because my bandwidth here is not, obviously is not very good. So what we have done by using this ecosystem is to create an environment where institutions financially transact with each other in real time. It is so that it is what is now powering the distribution of the Lumi all around the world. Just to give you an idea, currently we are able to distribute the Lumi and over 180 in about 185 countries around the world. The map you see will tell a different story to that of the financially excluded, where we are now for the first time able to reach Africans, both wherever they may be on the surface of the earth. The darker the colors you see on screen, the higher the concentration of account users in that country. But we are well on the way to that answer of delivering access to financial services, an instrument that's designed to ensure that it can to change narrative and rewrite our story and economic independence and economic transformation across the continent. One of the things that is very clear is that this is quite a movement. It's become such a movement that today we are having over 10,000 new accounts every single day. And this is what is driving the growth and driving adoption across every corner on the surface of the earth, where there are Africans and people of African descent. This such a strong movement, it has touched the minds of individuals like you and I, who have come to realize that it is through a collaborative engagement of all of us working together and shaping our own destiny can we begin to change and rewrite our own history. Just to give you an indication of numbers, in the last 7 days, we have processed about over 12 million Lumi in transactions over the last 7 days. The equivalent of that is over $180 million. Now, of course, you can imagine that if that is the figure over the last 7 days, even though that is growing day by day and week by week, we have made tremendous progress over the last 12 months. We have, as a result, created not just an ecosystem that today drives, that solves the problem of multiple currency across the continent, and created and implemented a solution that enables any individual and any business to be able to settle an invoice that is specified in any currency in the world with the underlying value being transferred in Lumi. That is truly revolutionary in many ways, but most importantly, it is revolutionary in terms of delivering both access and also enabling people to preserve value. As I mentioned in my initial opening, if you take the Sierra Leonean leone, for example, 2 years ago, it was £1 to 10,000 leones. Today, it's approximately £1 to nearly 15,000 leones. What that means is that it's lost almost 50% value in the last 2 years. But because the Lumi is pegged to gold, while the price of gold increases, the Lumi's value will appreciate against all currencies. And there is no room for any market to manipulate that. And so it provides not just an instrument of exchange, but also an instrument that can be used to preserve value, so that or a defining value of continental African currencies, which is really a construct to ensure that resources from within the continent are bought at cheaper and cheaper rates, while the cost of living globally is increasing, and ensuring to a large extent that our people do not benefit from the true value of their very well endowed. So it is really a truly transformational tool that we must embrace, that we must use, and that we must begin to empower our businesses and ensure Africa is trading with each other as efficiently as possible, and truly in a position where today we can say that with great confidence we can operationalize the African Continental Free Trade Area, which empowers and ensures the free movement of goods, services, and investment across the continent. But with the Lumi, that can be made a reality for many individuals and many businesses on the continent. I just wanted to throw those highlights in terms of both the numbers, in terms of the growth in daily actions or daily accounts. It is a movement like no other. And it is really like that because of the strong collaborative effort that we are seeing across all sectors within each country across the continent and in the diaspora. And also to give you an idea of the transaction capability, of course, yesterday being the 28th, there is the distribution of the stimulus, which is ongoing. And I hope many people on the audience will have received their payments by now. I can confirm that if you haven't received it, some of the transactions, because of large numbers involved, are actually still being processed as we speak. But we have managed to create an ecosystem that has resolved, or that stands to resolve effectively the problem of access to financial services for the vast majority of our people, and also the problem of the continent. So thank you very much, and let's drive on and ensure that we can create a better environment for the future generation. The only way that we can use this tool, the Lumi, is to embrace it and use it both individually and across all our businesses to ensure its success, to make sure that we can see the true transformational impact that it must have in our time and also for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Linus. We are so much appreciating of you presenting in spite of all the challenges that we have throughout the country, this side, and as well as in the continent, the whole problem of network. It is a challenge that we need to face head on. It is the infrastructure that we need to fund in the continent, our network. And thank you so much for sharing together with us.